Well, we may see a spike in post-traumatic stress among children because of the recent looting and violence. That's according to the SA Society of Psychiatrists, and they're warning that the recent unrest may spark fear in children as they're highly susceptible to feeling overwhelmed when watching the events on social media, the news, or through conversations their parents are having. Professor Renata Schoeman is a psychiatrist with the Society, and she's on the line now to discuss this further. Prof, what evidence does the Society base these findings on? Do we look to the past in order to try and see how the future is going to play out, especially when regards to such unrest?
Annika, there's two aspects. We know that in the past, as a nation, we have been exposed to situations like this pre-1994 and even around 1994. But when we look at the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, we have a firm set of criteria that's based in scientific evidence how we diagnose it. And in the case of children does not have to be specifically and directly exposed to the trauma or the violence that they witness to be traumatized. It might be indirect exposure, as you've mentioned, through adult conversations, through social media, etc., which then cause the symptoms which we call post-traumatic stress disorder.
Prof, they're the children that you see in a lot of the footage that gets played out, just standing by and watching this violence play out in front of them, and they almost become quite accustomed to seeing guns, and that's quite disturbing in itself. What about kids who are not directly involved and they're watching it on television or hearing their parents talk about it? How do we explain to them what's happening?
I think it's very important that you do convey the message that this is not normal, that this lack of control that children feel, that adults feel, is not how it should be, but also to acknowledge their fears and anxiety and say that in a case like this or in these scenarios, your emotions is normal, feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling scared, and that we have that conversation with the children, but also be very mindful of how we have the conversation, not making them feeling more insecure, but providing rather messages of support, messages of optimism in sense of, you don't have to be worried in terms of food. We are safe at the moment. There's many organizations that contribute to food, etc., so that we won't be hungry, but also in the sense of there's active things we can do. We can take control of our small little situation by providing structure for its children, maybe in the day routine, especially now during lockdown where that is also disrupted, but also other positive things. They can help to collect food or toys that can be distributed in the affected communities. So there's many ways where we can empower and give our children a message of hope, but never negating the anxiety and their normal response of fear towards the situation.
Prof, last question. We've got a global pandemic, and then we have these very disturbing visuals and violence playing out. It's a perfect melting pot, isn't it, of children going through huge amounts of distress. Middle-class families can probably afford a medical expert to help them work through some of their anxiety. What about the kids who are directly involved in seeing the looting and violence and playing out before their very eyes?
Yeah, there's three things. The one thing is, like, we know we don't have control over the environment, but adults can prevent secondary traumatization through limiting the children's exposure to videos, to WhatsApp messages, to social media, where they relive this experience and event over and over. The second thing is, as I mentioned, where you can, as an adult, also limit your conversations in front of the child, but have positive conversations, but also to be aware when you notice symptoms of distress in your child, whether it's anxiety, depression, a change in their sleeping, or even regressive behaviors like bedwetting, thumb sucking that they now might expose to, that you do seek professional help, which might still be available in some of the governmental clinics, through many of the NGOs that's jumping in to help, and also through the South African Depression and Anxiety Support Group helpline, which is available 24/7.
That was very helpful. Thank you so much, Professor Renata Schoeman, a psychiatrist with the South African Society of Psychiatrists, on the post-traumatic stress disorder that we could be seeing in our children, dealing not just with the global pandemic, but also the violence that's been playing out in our country.